Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, 𝗥𝗲𝘀. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 318. Dealing with disappointment. What an emotive word disappointment is. It can evoke feelings of shame, guilt, betrayal, angst, despair, upset, and far more. And why is that, given that life is really just one big experiment? I guess far too many of us have lost that as a legitimate reason underpinning life, or maybe some of us have never really held that belief about life in the first place. And if life is an experiment, as I believe it is, what exactly are we measuring ourselves against when we feel disappointment so deeply? For me, the emotional load, the heaviness I feel in my chest associated with that word stems back to parents, teachers, and other respected elders telling me they were disappointed in me. Not disappointed about what I'd done or not done, but disappointed in me. I even remember on occasion when I was told I was such a disappointment. For me, that weighs heavily and lurks unnoticed in the deep recesses of my conscious mind, ready to spring forth at the slightest provocation. And it's that distinction between behaviour and identity that becomes quietly dangerous over time. It's one of the reasons I recommend avoiding the word disappointment or disappointed when you're giving feedback. Firstly, it rarely has the desired impact, whatever that was, and secondly, it usually just drops us right back into child mode and in a heartbeat. But I'm not here to talk about feedback today, even though it's a commonly touched on practice in my work, as it's typically done so poorly. This episode is about how we manage our feelings and therefore our responses to the whole idea of disappointment. The big shift I'm inviting you to take is accepting that disappointment is an emotional experience, not an identity to inhabit or a label that defines you. A few things have happened recently that have brought this topic into sharp focus and helped me to see how often people compromise who they are in order not to disappoint others. And in doing so, they willingly disappoint themselves. In our desire to not let people down, we let ourselves down. Talk about people-pleasing taken to the extreme. So the uncomfortable but relevant question then is, whose disappointment are you actually organising your life around? I felt disappointment recently when one of my delegates clearly took a disliking to me. I know not why. Whilst I know I can't control how others perceive me, I couldn't ignore the dagger's looks being thrown my way. So I unleashed my "what others think of me is none of my business" attitude, but it didn't really work. I still felt those daggers piercing my skin, which heightened my sense of vulnerability. What this sets up is a cycle of bracing for both the consequences of disappointing others and also for being disappointed, including being disappointed in myself. It's a typical double bind. This can't be good for mental health and well-being, because where is the freedom to experience life, to learn from our experiences, and to create the psychological safety we need? So I decided to explore the topic a little from my own perspective too, because I realised that I was currently braced for disappointment. The content of my story may not resonate too well with you, but I'm pretty sure the process I experienced will. so please hear me out. So, it's that time of year where here in the Northern Hemisphere the garden is beginning to wake up and the promising signs of the new growing season are budding all around me. I'm a spring baby and I'm always excited at this time of year. Now, I'm fairly new to growing dahlias, and last winter was the first time I lifted them from their pots to protect them from the frost and the harsh winter conditions. I stored them as per instructions offered by the serious growers, and if I'm honest, have been sort of holding my breath ever since. This lifting and storing is a process filled with risk, apparently. Ever the diligent student, I have more recently been following the posts about how to wake up your tubers and realised that the potential risks were nowhere near over. I've been reading questions like, how many tubers should I expect to lose? And is this tuber viable? And worst of all, is this gall? That's a nasty bacterial condition which, if present, means all tubers should be burned and all equipment sterilised to prevent cross-contamination. This is serious stuff. So as you might imagine, I found myself getting a little anxious and preparing for the worst. In other words, bracing for disappointment. All the care and attention I'd given to my tender tubers might have been in vain if I'd lost the lot. I'm sure you can see how this cycle is starting and where it might be going. It's the classic self-fulfilling prophecy. Except the prophecy isn't about the tubers at all. It's about the story I'm rehearsing in advance. Now, I refer to myself as an eternal optimist, so a part of me was actively hoping that all would be well. This is typically the territory of my inner advocate, Goldie, whilst another part of me was preparing to open the containers and find mush, or worst. Ah, there she is, my inner critic Gladys, always on hand to give her negative input. She tries her best to ensure that I'm preemptively bracing for disaster so I won't be caught off guard. You might think that could be helpful, but honestly for me it's not. I actually find it puts rather a downer on everything, which bursts my optimistic bubble. But as you can see, my sub-personalities were having quite the conflab about this situation. We might refer to this as expectation management, but notice just how often our expectations are of the glass half empty kind. And then, when things, as anticipated, go to hell in a handcart, we'll be left to pick up the pieces. That type of anticipation is so wearing to me and indicates that I'm giving up hope. There's the downer. Next in this cycle, following that loss of hope, I've noticed that I contract. I expect less of me and of others. This looks like withdrawing both verbally and physically, minimising my presence and input. It's as though I'm pre-editing what I'm saying and doing so that I'm able to soften the blow, so to speak. What follows next, unsurprisingly, is that because I've reduced my potential to have impact, I am less impactful. Funny that. And because we tend to notice what we're looking for, back to being meaning-making machines, my worst fears are confirmed. This, of course, strengthens my conviction that others were right. I am a disappointment, so I was right to expect less of myself and others. Now the self-flagellation can begin and I can brace even more. And so the cycle continues, at which time it may tighten or spiral out of control, and you can apply whichever image works for you. When I think I'm protecting myself from disappointment, what I'm actually doing is inviting it and rehearsing for it. I wonder how much of this cycle is ringing true for you right now. So how can we break it, or at least interrupt it? Firstly, we need to notice that we're caught in the cycle, and then we need to acknowledge that we are active participants in the creation of it. Shock horror. That means taking a long, hard look in the mirror and getting really honest with ourselves. Then, the ideal place for this pattern interrupt seems to be as soon as I notice that I am bracing. In that moment, rather than allowing anxiety to increase and contraction to tighten, take a pause in order to look at what is really happening. This stops the automatic reacting and returns us to a place of being able to respond. And that pause is not evasive. Far from it. It's a deliberate refusal to continue the destructive pattern. After that pause, respond as you would have pre-brace. Say what needed saying. Do what needed to be done. Be as present as the situation requires. In my case, with my tubers, it would have allowed me to open the sealed boxes with all of the excitement of Christmas morning so I could be genuinely amazed and delighted about what I'd find inside. Let's face it, Mother Nature works miracles and in mysterious ways. What actually happened was that I peered inside with a sense of dread. My bracing robbed me of any joyful experience and wonder at what I might find, which I will remember this time next year. And in case you're curious, yes, I've had a few mushy tubers, but they were only a tiny proportion, as most of them were firm and showing the first signs of healthy shoots. And in the big scheme of things, if life is an experiment, which I firmly believe it is, my question is, what can I learn from this year's lifting and storing and revealing? If it helps, I'll provide us all with a pocket full of free passes that give us permission to unbrace. By all means, notice when you're bracing, acknowledge it, because it's clearly something that is important to us. And then allow the bracing to soften, to loosen its grip, thereby freeing us to resume our usual posture and attitude. Let the bracing subside so the excitement of experimenting and learning can continue. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.